Uh, Assalamu alaikum, Sheryar. And कैसे हैं आप खैरियत से? And thank you so much for being part of the Common Success podcast session. I hope we were waiting for you for quite some time, and आपसे काफी बात भी हो रही थी about the whole concept of Drive Dia and what our media front Common Success actually plays. So a brief summary of what Drive Dia is all about. So basically, we're creating this social. Platform for entrepreneurs, which is social enterprise platform where startups will have an opportunity to connect with different stakeholders. We're creating this umbrella in Pakistan where they'll have an opportunity to connect with the likes of mentors, stakeholders, customers, and we're going to create this profile of startups where they can, have this opportunity to create their brand awareness, to create this ecosystem in Pakistan. Our main goal is to create this Pakistani ecosystem where startups who are new or startups who've been there for the longest time both can come together and share their own experiences and share their journey. And Common Success, basically our media front is all about sharing the success stories of entrepreneurs. And the basic question, I mean, the motto of the whole podcast session is to ask their journey of success, how they all started it, and what were the challenges and opportunities they faced along the way, and uh, from the start till the end, what it has been like. So ये एक पूरी जर्नी होती है और सक्सेस का हम एक सवाल पूछते हैं. Now a lot of people who have come across earlier उनको success थोड़ा सा question, even though it's a simple question. I mean, if I ask you what is success, but वो एक question इस तरह का होता है कि इसका कोई definite answer नहीं होता, इसका कोई concrete answer नहीं होता. So this is the whole concept of it. So let's start the podcast session, Sheryar. So I would like to give Uzair the opportunity to ask the first question. So Uzair.
Yes. So basically, I want to ask, who is Sheryar Bachani? Venture of Pakistan का तो बहुत अभी हम recently सुन रहे हैं, लेकिन शहरियार बचानी कौन है?
Sure, yeah. First of all, Walaikum Salam, both of you, Kamran and Uzair. Thank you for inviting me again. I think Drive Dia is an awesome concept, and the more awareness there is around the tech ecosystem, the better. That's where we have common goals. But who is Sheryar? It's an interesting question. I'm born and raised in Karachi. So I'm originally from Pakistan. I left for a little bit. I did some of my middle schooling in London, and then came back to do my O levels, and A levels in Karachi. So I did my A levels at a school called Nixir College. Was super interested in business and finance, tech, innovation. So obviously things were very earlier on around the world as well. Uber was not a thing, Snapchat was not a thing. But when I came down to New York for college, I came to NYU to study. I went to the business school here, so I went to Stern School of Business, studied finance there and entrepreneurship. And when I came down here for college, that's when all of these big consumer internet companies that now are part of our day-to-day lives were just about to explode onto the global scene, starting off with the US. But there was a lot of activities. I've been into entrepreneurship since I was, I would say, 15. My first entrepreneurial venture I actually started in my high school at the age of, I think we were 16 or 17 at that time. This was way before there was a challenger bank or a digital bank or a neo bank. This is 2010, so there was no such concept of a branchless bank. But me and two of my best friends started what would be a branchless bank for high school students. So every student in my high school has a credit card and that we worked with Visa on. So I signed my first contract when I was 16 years old, and that credit card program is still a part of my high school 10 years later. So if anybody told you to,
I had a question. Sorry, I cut you off. So, weren't you a little scared कि at the age of 16 अभी बहुत ज़्यादा जो बड़े काम कर रहे हैं, तो I can imagine मैं 16 साल में खेल रहा होता था, I couldn't even imagine कि मैं मतलब the whole concept of legalities और वो credit card वो ऐसा because I was still with you for the longest time. तो वो किस तरह से passion obviously it comes from someone who you look up to. तो कोई inspiration अगर आपकी रही हो मतलब in all of this.
Honestly, I since a very young age, I've always been someone who likes to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Fortunately and unfortunately, Pakistan, when there's a lot of things that need to be challenged, right? Whether there's societal issues or just if you take this entire to what I do with Venture of Pakistan, right? My thesis, I'm very bullish on. I'm investing in students, right? People don't want to invest in student entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to tell the world, hey, me and a whole 10 years worth of people have been doing this since they were 16. If we can do it in high school, you can better believe you can do it in college or university.
That's true.
So, obviously, my peers in terms of the tech ecosystem have their own thought views on this, but, I have 10 years worth of data. And to give you a fun fact that not a lot of people know, my co-founder for that bank or student-run financial institution is the co-founder of Bazaar. So not a lot of people know that.
That is something that
so there
right now. Yeah.
We don't advertise it a lot, but my best friends are also very much active in the ecosystem. I'm sure you guys know what Bazaar is.
We know. Yeah, exactly.
Doing. So, if anybody says, oh, why are you so bullish, on university talent? I'm like, मतलब हम लोग 16 साल की उम्र से करके आ रहे हैं, like आपके सामने हुआ है, right? I am doing what I'm doing in Silicon Valley, and my co-founder is doing Bazaar. So, we have a lot of data points on that. So I think that was one of the status quo challenging thing was one of the things. And then, I quickly learned that, textbook learning ek had tak is like, very good. And then the best way to learn is by doing. And if you want to learn how to do business or tech or innovation or building products or what, you just have to go out there and do it, fail, then try again.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and those are kind of like I would say, root causes that have led me over the years. It's been a 10-year journey to, essentially come up with Venture of Pakistan as well. But we'll get more into that later. But
definitely.
In terms of,
sorry.
Do you want me to continue on?
No, I think
my background.
Zaid wants to ask a question. I think he was waiting for the longest time. Zaid, do you have a question?
No, basically, I just wanted to ask about Venture of Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
So what is Venture of Pakistan? What's the entire process? How it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So Venture of Pakistan is essentially a venture platform. That's a term that's not really familiar in or like that much around it, at least in our system or in the MENA region. It's something that's much more understood or tested out in US and Europe, as well. But it's to Pakistan's ecosystem from the ground up. I have been a silent observer of our ecosystem for a very, very long time, since I was in A-levels. We have a great fun. We have a lot of good incubators and accelerators. But in terms of what our issues are, where we stand right now, how behind we are in terms of some of our peers emerging in frontier markets, basically problems that we've had. One, obviously the regulatory and infrastructural issues that Pakistan found that are actively infrastructure, not so much. But which is why we've had lack of emerging founders or entrepreneurs that have the investor confidence is because we have a real talent gap, right? Hamare, top kids from your top universities have never had a very clear and structured or awareness heavy path of breaking into tech. And people started working only after Kareem became a thing, and then Swivel came, and so on, right? So this is the last 2 to 3 years. Having been born and raised there, I have friends that went to schools like LUMS and IBA and so on. So I've been through that journey with them in terms of how they kind of went about the discovery process. And there was not really any path or platform what roles exist in tech, right? What is product? What is UX design? Um, so, unfortunately, our universities back home are pre-designed to churn out FMCG talent, right? So the best kids will want to go work for your Unilevers and Pepsis instead of your Airlifts and Bikeas and Bazaars. So man, our tagline is fellows today, founders tomorrow. And that's basically built on the premise that you cannot build a company if you have no experience working at one or helping build another one, right? A lot of people, put that fancy title, ex Kareem, ex Swivel. That's because that's where they learned what they needed to learn, and then they're doing something else, right? Like, for example, like the Dastagir guys, right? They're all ex Airlift, for example. So, that is a statement that is like it's a thing. Like that's why people, how like the entrepreneurship is spurred within people, right? And this is not just something that's like akin to the West, but Daraz, for example, Rocket Internet, those are all things where like these are things that promote that, right? That Rocket Internet is also a venture platform. So that's kind of why I wanted to focus on nothing else than the root cause, which is that talent pipeline. And I like to call at least the fellowship and offering as a awareness, education, and experience program, right? And the awareness and the education part is more important because then the experience will be automatically better, both for a startup, but also for the individual, right? So I'm trying to do this element of course correction where I'm just bring so much up into the ecosystem to the that are university talent that even if right now, but at least they know what the right process is or what are the right things to think about in terms of building a company and getting that hands-on experience. The top startup, and whilst getting access to mentors from Silicon Valley, from companies like mine, Google and Facebook and Amazon, that can help them navigate the world of technology, that world. So all of that in a way that they're getting a robust industry curriculum.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think you have.
Sorry, Kamran, I lost you there for a
second. Yeah. I think Uzair has left, but he'll be joining us soon. But Sheryar, there are a lot of questions that I wanted to ask. I mean, you have pretty much summarized the whole concept of Venture of Pakistan. I mean, what it is and what it does. So there are a couple of questions that I wanted to ask in terms of the fellowship program, but that instead of investing into a product or a service, you're basically, what I think of it, the whole concept is you're nurturing people to become entrepreneurs of tomorrow. So you're basically investing resources into people so that they have the idea of how entrepreneurship actually works. And how it works is basically you are sending them to different institutions where they can learn the concept of entrepreneurship, where what is marketing, how it's implied, what is finance, operations, and the whole idea of leading a company. I think you're basically nurturing entrepreneurs. और पाकिस्तान में ये concept it's new. जैसा अभी आपने पहले ही कहा कि लोग instead of going for a product or a service, they're not going towards people, and that is the reason why a lot of entrepreneurs fail as well. मैंने जो देखा है कि they find a particular problem कि अच्छा यार ये product है, ये भी पाकिस्तान में नहीं है, let's try it out, but वो लोग उनको खुद नहीं आइडिया होता कि वो कर सकते हैं नहीं कर सकते. That's an issue that a lot of people face. So in terms of the whole process of Venture of Pakistan, so how does it work? I mean, do you screen out students who want to go to different companies, or how does the process work? If you can explain that in a bit detail. What is the step 1, step 2, and then What is
Yeah,
the
for
actual
sure.
process? Yeah.
Sure. So our program, the fellowship program, is basically broken down into three different components. One is the experiential learning component, which is the where the fellows get matched to one of our partner startups and they intern there for 8
Yeah.
to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
The second component is the learning model, which is our industry focused curriculum. By the way, nothing is outsourced. Our curriculum is our intellectual property. We built it
Okay.
ourselves.
Okay.
We
Okay.
do everything. The only thing we don't do is internship part. That obviously we connect them.
Yeah.
But basically, that is covered through 6 different modules, and these modules are focused on the core competencies within tech. So different roles that people or career paths that you can take in tech. So these are management, experience design, business operations, which is marketing, business development / partnerships, and then finance in tech or venture capital. So essentially, this is like the main curriculum. Then they have a startup success boot camp right before their internship,
Yeah.
so that they're like much more ready to hit the ground running on day one. And then there's different things that we do, like office hours. And then I built a founder curriculum myself,
Okay.
that I do in sessions with all the fellows on a weekly basis as well.
Yeah.
That is much more in terms of how to think about these things. It's not we built a company in a weekend. We have 5 products or 5 companies that don't exist in Pakistan and we just copy it. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are some of the common problems that you see why people fail, right? Other things being like, you know, imagine a first-time founder, even a second-time founder, trying to build your company. It's in an idea stage and you don't even have an MVP yet, right? You need to focus on building your product. I would say on an average global basis, 60% of founders do that. 40% focus on capital, just capital raising.
Yeah.
In Pakistan, 90% focus on capital raising and 10% focus on building your product.
That's true.
Which is why people fail.
Yeah.
Early stage is not about, even from a venture capital perspective, early stage VC is not about capital. Capital is secondary. It's about the strategic guidance the investor gives you, right?
Yeah.
I kept saying platform, right? Platform is about building talent, building founders.
Yeah.
Right. So some VCs globally, there's first round capital who invested in Airlift.
Yeah.
There's Peter. I'm sure you've heard of Peter Thiel.
Yeah. Yeah. I have heard. Yeah. I've heard.
Right. Facebook's first. So you know what their investment thesis is, that we are a founder first, we are a talent first fund. We invest in founders. We don't invest in the product. Right. So that is the thesis that I have. Right. I'm investing in human capital.
Yeah.
Right. So that for that reason, right, there's an element. I use the words course correction earlier. That's why I use that word, because there's a lot of noise in our ecosystem. We are very impressionable people. If you don't have someone telling you, the cold, harsh truths of how entrepreneurship and this stuff is actually done, we're going to keep continuing behind, Bangladesh and Indonesia and all of these countries. So
that's true. That's true. That's true.
Right? Pakistan is a glorified hype man as a country, right? We just like the noise. I love that in certain things. When it comes to, building out our tech ecosystem, it's not good, right? It's just more and more noise.
I had some issue with the internet.
So he's joining us. Right.
No worries. So the way the program ka format works is that, for example, at the end of June, our application was open for 10 days. We had, undergrads and grad students apply. We in 10 days, no brand, no marketing. We had over 1,000 applications. We ended up interviewing like 200 people, ended up taking 18 fellows. So, less than like 2% acceptance rate. So very exclusive that way. And then, once we selected the fellows and they accepted their offers, then boot camp for them.
Yeah.
That was to terminologies, certain things that think about startups that might not be true, that may be true. What is a good startup? What is a bad success stories, failures, a lot of that stuff, so that they are much more familiar with the environment they're walking into. Right? Every day is different. Every day is unstructured. You need to have comfort with ambiguity. So those things are very important to have in your head when you enter like a Bikea or when you enter an airlift or day one.
Yeah.
So then what we do is that with our partners, we conduct an assessment with startups to basically size up the opportunity in terms of what their resourcing needs are. And then we kind of create a scope or role for the fellow based on their current business needs.
Yeah.
And then using the fellows profiles that we have, we match them
Startups.
accordingly.
Yeah.
So let's say Bikea needs a product or strategy kind of a fellow or intern,
Yeah.
and someone has that kind of a background, we match them, right? So their internship component, summer, because this was our first program cohort, and then because of COVID, we had to delay our timeline a little bit. It was a 6-week internship, but next summer it'll be a 10-week internship.
Yeah.
And when the internship starts, then our learning program also starts.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, those 6 modules, right?
Yeah,
We do
6
one module,
Yeah.
we do one module, then we do another. The modules themselves are broken down into 3 things.
Okay.
They're broken down into a deep dive. A deep dive is like your 101, very theoretical, like what is product management. Sorry?
I was saying that it's kind of
So
interactive
that's
session.
a deep,
Yeah.
then the deep, yeah, like an exact it's like a 101 kind of a thing, and then deep dive ke baad, once you have that kind of knowledge base, like ye hai kya, karte kya hai ye log, then we do a master class, and the master class is a much more activity, interaction, engagement based, where you're going to actually apply these things, right? For example, management. We had who's currently at Kareem, previously was at Dawai and Daraz. He walked the fellows through what requirements document looks like, and then they had to write one.
Yeah.
For a new feature, right? And that is your bread and butter as a product manager. You cannot talk to engineers or product marketers or business operational folks in the company if you don't give the engineers a product requirements document. Ye cheezein chahiye, feature, different people work that.
Yeah.
So those are like your when it comes to your tool set as a PM, it's at the top of the list.
Yeah.
So these are things like these guys you will not learn in your business classes or anything, right? Because we don't have classes that focus on this.
Yeah. So basically,
So master.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something.
Master class ke baad, there's a keynote, and a keynote is usually someone very senior that I can get through my network or just generally from the tech industry. Obviously, right now as we develop our brand, there'll be some time before people like senior people come reaching out to us themselves. But
Yeah.
got senior folk from the Valley, from different companies at Google, Salesforce.
No, that's true.
And just fans of emerging markets or people who are interested in the emerging. And learning program khatam hota hai, so basically we close out the program with our what we call a career accelerator, which is essentially our mentorship program where the fellows get matched to one of the mentors from our mentor community, and the mentor community is basically an aggregation of anybody who's Pakistani, whether it's someone like myself, whether it's someone who's born and raised in America or Canada or so on.
Yeah.
Work at top tech, whether it's big tech like companies, it's Y Combinator startups, whatever it is. As long as you're an experienced founder or experienced operator or tech professional, we are trying to like bring you onto our platform because what I saw in the, especially as my friends here that came from Pakistan, that are in these industries or in these companies, we've never had way of giving back, or providing mentorship to whether it's emerging or aspiring founders, or whether it's startups. So, and I wanted to kind of create a one-stop shop platform for people like myself and others to have a very easy way of value that we've kind of grown tired of doing that with start here, or like emerging founders here. And as you continue to go older, you have to be very selective with how you invest your time. So I'd rather invest my free time in Pakistan. So.
Yeah, that's good.
It's quite a journey for the fellows. Vigorous training, काफी लंबी journey.
Yeah, the program summer for 10 weeks, so it's been I would say 4 months of. They definitely know how to build a company now. I'll tell you that.
So basically, I wanted to ask
the right way
regarding the what you call the financial feasibility kind of thing, because I've seen in a lot of startups that they have an idea, and just like you mentioned earlier, that the reasons why most of the entrepreneurs they fail down the line is because although they have a solid idea, but they don't know how to cost that idea, they don't know how to budget that idea. So have you seen, since you've been working with, you've been partnering with a lot of startups, and you're giving this fellowship program where you're mentoring people, into different startups. So how important is financial feasibility when I talk about a startup who is just coming, around the block, or someone who's been there in the market for the longest time? So how important is that?
Yeah, I would say for us, it is, I mean, generally speaking, what you're referring to is called VC readiness, right? So venture capital readiness.
Yeah.
And that's basically the time when you're trying to, essentially get the building blocks for your pitch deck, right? Or your investor deck. I would say regardless of what stage of a company you are and what type of capital you're looking for, whether it's early stage capital or whether it's growth capital.
Yeah.
At the growth stage, financial diligence becomes a lot more important, right? Earlier stage, sometimes the products are creating new markets altogether, right? So there's little data or less data, and that's why these things are sometimes called bets or like moonshots.
Yeah.
Okay, you're essentially taking a bet, right? Like Peter Thiel took a bet on Facebook. He didn't know Facebook would become Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say for me, it's top 3 things, right? Having product, defining your customer, and your market sizing, right? So what people call TAM, total addressable market, and then how much of that market can you service? That stuff essentially gives you your revenue trajectory, right? And how much of and then based on how you do or your traction or your feedback from early adopters or customers and users will help you understand how much of that trajectory you will penetrate and how fast you will penetrate it. And that's the stuff that investors like to look at. Yeah. Now, look, I'm a straight shooter, so I'll tell you like the difference of who has been able to do it and who hasn't, right? Like market sizing and opportunity sizing, just agar B2B, let's say you are running a last delivery company, right? Food delivery company. Just by Googling the global market size of food delivery is not your market, man. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
No, trust me. I've seen some insane things in terms of people's pitch decks back home. So sometimes I'm like, should I laugh? Should I cry? Yeah. Look, I'll tell you this, right? There are startups that are, I would say, brand names now, jinko 10 saal lage capital raise karne mein.
Yeah.
And then there are people like Bazaar that raise money in 10 days.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you think? And then, but in our ecosystem, that's attributed to, oh yeah, these guys came from abroad. They are, buyer ka experience. Yeah, sure. The buyer ka experience is there, but the difference is they know what goes into a pitch deck, or they know how to pitch a pitch deck. Yeah. Right? They know how to voice over the content they have on the slides.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? There are companies like BookMe and Mandi Express and so on, jo, 6-7 saal lag gaye seed capital raise karne mein. That's primarily because market sizing or not the ability not being able to communicate
Yeah.
what your product is, how you, yeah. So those things are very important, and that's the gap that we have. That is what I'm putting into these founders, so that aage jaake, if these guys are pitching to Sarmayakar or Indus Valley or so on, they're much more attuned to what they are looking for, because our investors are from abroad, right? At least majority of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
If I want to
go
ask
ahead, sorry.
here something,
Yeah.
आपके सवाल से मुझे एक आया कि मतलब you are talking about different VCs वगैरह, तो normally what do you think is more important, आपका idea, the team, the person behind it, or what do you say is like the best, like ये चीज यार सबसे यार rather.
Yeah, so you mentioned all the, I would say, the tenets of different like the different check marks of diligence, right?
Yeah.
You look at the product, you look at the founder or the founding team, you look at the traction they have, you look at the general opportunity in terms of scope kya hai, aage kya बढ़ सकता है scope, different things affect that, macro trends, things like COVID and so on, they're accelerants, right? I would say every VC has a different way of giving weightage to those things, right? And they'll give weightage to different things based on what their investment thesis is, right? So when you become a venture capitalist, before unless you have like a syndicate of like angel investors that you pool in money from, you usually have an institutionalized fund, right? And when you have an institutionalized fund, you have fund documentation that has language around your investment thesis, right? Because that is the thesis your LPs, the people who invest, who give you capital, right? Because the VCs are general partners, they're not, they're not the actual capital providers. So they have a responsibility to their LPs, and they have to, stick to their thesis, right? So when you are coming up with your thesis, these things are very important, right? Like, am I looking for the next best idea? Like, am I looking for, the biggest problem solvers of like industries that are ripe for disruption, right? So for example, Atif and Indus have that kind of a thesis, right? Where they're looking for big ideas, big bold ideas. But he has a very balanced approach when it comes to founders as well. Really believes in entrepreneurs or founders that want to help build Pakistan as well, and help build the industries that they are kind of disrupting. So I would say it depends on the investor themselves or the VC fund themselves. For example, for us, right, like, we're obviously very, very bullish and focused on building talent and building founders, right? Creating a talent pipeline, whether it's for in the short term for creating a robust pipeline for our growing and maturing startups, or in the near to midterm or mid to long term, having a better pool of emerging founders, right? That kind of have like the lay of the land, have a framework that I've kind of inculcated and instilled through the program in them, through my experiences, through whatever I've learned here, right? Like I'm trying. This is why I talk about how I'm trying to bridge Silicon Valley and like the global tech industry to Pakistan, is because I'm sitting here working for Alphabet. Whatever I can learn from there, I can pass on, right? And there's not a lot of people that want to do that. Yeah.
Right. So the last question, Shreya, before we end the podcast session, that was a lovely podcast, with you, and you talked about the whole concept of fellowship and what is Venture Pakistan and how you train undergrads to become the future entrepreneurs of tomorrow. So, a question that we ask a lot of our entrepreneurs is, what is the meaning of success in their own terms? And I know it's a tough question, and
It's a big,
it's a big question, and there isn't any concrete answer to it. So if you can explain what is success, so here it goes. You got the platform.
Yeah, dude, it is a very good question, and equally as tough. Like you said, I think success and its definition and how you measure it is something that everyone kind of, everybody starts off with like a general overview of what that means, according to society, according to a certain track that you want to pursue, whether, or whether what success looks like in school. There's a lot of like tangible, societally acceptable things like, good grades and like, head boy or president, debate captain, things like that. In business, it's obviously like, when you are running a business, part of setting metrics and KPIs or OKRs, depending on what industry you're in, is very important, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because you have to have a measuring success for your product or what you do, and to against that, right? You know where your gaps are, where you're doing well, and that helps with resourcing, that helps you allocate capital and so on. So I think for me it was similar, right? When I was younger, success to me was, in the school environment was obviously getting, the best grades, having the right extracurriculars so that I could get into the college that I wanted to. And then, with different phases of life, that's what it was. But the overarching theme was around external validation. Honest, that's why a lot of people do certain things, right? Is to see like what that looks like to the outside world, or how the external world or like everybody else perceives you, because perception is reality.
Yeah, it is true.
So that was a driving force for me as well. Like, going to a good school, going to a good university, being the most popular person there, like being, for example, at NYU, I was student body president, right? I was the first Muslim president in the history of the university.
That's great.
Things like that was success for me, right? At graduation, at my graduation, I led the graduation procession. So I carried like the banner, right? And that was at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
National Stadium nahi tha, but Yankee Stadium. You know what I mean? So, for me, for my parents, I got to do that at Yankee. I got to do that twice. I got to do that at Yankee Stadium, and then I got to do that at Madison Square Garden, two very like epic venues that a 16-year-old from Karachi could never thought he would be like. And having 30,000 people see you, parents of all the people graduating and everything, man, in a stadium, and you're doing that, right? That is how you represent Pakistan. So those were very those were my measures of success back then, right? Like, I am reaching the pinnacle of whatever activity I have invested time in, because that looks good on me, but it also looks good on Pakistan, right? When I went to college in 2012. The number one thing people asked me, like during my orientation week, was, A, how do you know how to speak so good English? Number two, like, is Karachi just like the Karachi map in Call of Duty? This is a real question someone asked me. So, उस वक्त उन ज़मानों में the only news that you had about Pakistan was in CNN, the bombs and everything, right? So I had a bigger mandate almost, right? Because I never want us to be looked down upon for things that you are not in control of, right? And I think that people have took years to understand that, not everyone is the same when it comes to our religion or, our country. So, I took that upon myself, whatever small part I could play to change people's opinions about, people from back home. I did that through different things. I was an international kid that became president of a school in, in New York, in New York City, where, you have people, smartest people, all kinds of alpha people. So, but then, and then, obviously working on Wall Street, having all of these brand names on my resume, that was obviously, a measure of success. I think ultimately the fact with the job that I have right now, working at Alphabet, and working for the people who I work for, there are not many people my age that report to the folks that I report to. So alhamdulillah, that has been like an unparalleled experience. But one thing that I've realized over time, and that's kind of how I measure success now, is if there's that I set for my, whether it's for Venture for Pakistan or whether it's, for me personally, I will only measure success against if that goal is fulfilled in terms of what I wanted. right? Not what the world wants, not what the world thinks of it. I couldn't care less about that stuff anymore. And I think that comes with maturity and a lot of self-awareness. So, a lot of people need to do a lot of self-discovery before they reach that kind of content. So, if, for example, if my goal today is like, I need to finish laundry. If I do that and I'm happy, I'm great. I'm a success.
I think,
but from a VFP perspective, right? From a Venture for Pakistan perspective, I think our success is along different lines. So in a very short term, the success, if you had to see success from an awareness, education, and experience perspective, right? My ultimate ROI will be when we can prove our thesis, essentially, where not only our startups are like more mature startups are getting, Silicon Valley A grade talent, right? That are thinking the right way, that are go-getters, that, don't, are fully autonomous, like don't need a lot of hand holding, can actually provide ideas, can challenge the leadership on like different things, propose things, a lot of ownership and accountability and taking initiative. That is lacking when it comes to some of our folks, right? And the ability to over communicate, very small soft skills that even the smartest hustler in Pakistan doesn't have. But ultimately, the ROI will be if one of my fellows becomes a founder and raises capital and builds a product that is used by customers. That is the only measure of success, right?
I think you
because then you can't say that student entrepreneurs are not entrepreneurs, right?
That's great. That's great. I think you have pretty much summed up the whole, journey of success. I think you set up targets where you feel like, okay, fine, if I done this. I think you started off your through your childhood as to how schools में आपने target set किया, you achieved that, then through your college to venture Pakistan. So I think success के जो what I figure उसे है वो ये है कि छोटे steps
वही है कि छोटे छोटे स्टेप्स रखो, एक जरूरी नहीं कि एक ही बार ये मेरा जी सक्सेसफुल पॉइंट है. Keep it small और उसके आगे सीढ़ी चढ़ते जाओ.
I think very well.
Yeah, and guys, one thing that I add to that, तुम लोग ने अभी जो you mentioned small steps. Earlier on when I was younger, like a lot of people, I thought that you need to have a plan and like everything needs to go according to that plan, and then nothing can like go wrong, kind of a thing. Obviously, that's not real life, right? Like once life hits you and like adversity hits you, I think as challenging as it is to live in this country or like live abroad, I've been abroad since I was 17. So I've essentially like grown up here, like my 20s have been here and so on. I come back every I used to come back twice a year. I come back 1 to 2 times a year. But, and having no family in this country, it's challenging, but it's also made me a lot more independent and given me a lot of exposure to things that have accelerated my way of thinking.
Yeah.
So, one thing I realized was that almost nothing goes according to plan. You have to have a healthy regard of what is possible and what is not possible, right? And ultimately, I think, and this is actually a term that I had learned from one of my friends in college, but there's this concept called Equifinality, which is essentially, you can look it up, it's an English word, which basically means that there are infinite ways of reaching your destination. So what that means is that like, as long as you have like a clear idea of what is the ultimate end game, right? There are, infinite ways of reaching there. So, managing life is like an actual art. And, this is one of the building blocks of that. So, I don't think a lot of people our ages think in that kind of regard. Especially not, never mind. But I feel like there's a lot, like a healthy dose of maturity that you need to get to before you can think like that.
I think very well said. I think thank you so much, Sheryar, for being part of our podcast episode. And
of course, man.
The things that you have said, I think a lot of people are going to learn from it. I think a lot of people, especially those young entrepreneurs, said, "Okay, बिल्कुल अपना एक journey start करना चाह रहे, they want to pursue entrepreneurship as a career, and they want to learn the ways in which they can, reach that success." I think success का जो element होता है वो अभी तो नहीं आएगा, लेकिन वो steps लेके जाएगा. It takes time, वो steps लेके आएगा, and I think जैसे श्रेयार ने भी बात की, I think it's going to take time, but if you do the things in the right way, in the right direction, and keeping in mind कि आपके क्या goals हैं, तो I think it takes a little amount of effort. तो आपके पास you have to have a team as well. तो team साथ होगी तो वो तभी success क्या कहते हैं आपको मिलेगा. But thank you once again, Sheryar,
Thank you so much.
for being part of a common success.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you,
And
thank you for inviting me, guys.
no worries. And guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. The links are going to be in the description below. Also, Venture Pakistan link is going to be in the description below. And Sheryar ने जैसे अभी we had a conversation way back, and he was mentioning he was coming to Pakistan. So I'm hoping Sheryar अगर आप पाकिस्तान आए and यहाँ पे fellowship programs जरूर दें क्या कहते हैं to our people who want to take entrepreneurship as a career, or I think people are going to be learning quite a lot from you, from your company. So I would definitely want कि आप यहाँ पे आएं and वो जो जिस तरह के mentorship या classes type होगी वो जरूर दें. I think we would love to have you here in Pakistan as well. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.